50th Attack Squadron. The 50th Attack Squadron is a squadron of the United States Air Force stationed at Shaw Air Force Base, South Carolina, where it operates the General Atomics MQ-9 Reaper unmanned aerial vehicle. It is assigned to the 25th Attack Group, also at Shaw AFB, and a component of the 430 Quad Wing, located at Creech Air Force Base, Nevada. Formed in August 1917 as the 50th Aero Squadron, the unit flew observation missions in the American-built de Havilland DH-4 over the battlefields of World War I on 6 October 1918, 1 LT Harold East. Goettler and 2 LT Erwin R. Bleckley of the 50th Aero Squadron were posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. During World War I and II as the 431st Bombardment Squadron, the unit earned the Distinguished Unit Citation and the Presidential Unit Citation for its services in the Pacific Theater. The unit was subsequently inactivated on 20 October 1947. The squadron was reactivated at the United States Air Force Academy on 1 October 1983 and designated the 50th Airmanship Training Squadron. The focus of the 50th changed to the classroom, supporting the instruction of U.S. Air Force Academy cadets in military strategic studies as the 50th Education Squadron. World War I. The unit was first organized as the 50th Aero Squadron with 149 men at Kelly Field No. 1, Texas, on 6 August 1917. Moved to Kelly Field No. 2 on 12 September and designated as a school squadron. Personnel entering training for engine mechanics and perform field garrison duties. Was moved back to Field No. 1 on 17 November and was designated a service squadron, being equipped with Curtiss J-4 aircraft and pilots, and entered training for combat service in France. On 20 December 1917, the 50th transferred from Kelly Field and ordered for overseas duty. It moved to the Aviation Concentration Center, Camp Mills, Garden City, New York, and arrived on 3 January 1918. Departed from the United States on Transport No. 508 RMS Khomeini on 9 January, arriving Liverpool, England on 24 January. Once in England, the 50th was moved to RSC Harlaxton, Lincolnshire, and began advanced training prior to being sent to France. Instruction was received in aircraft rigging and engine repair, along with gunnery, radio, photography, and aerial bombing. Combat in France. See Erwin R. Bleckley, Harold East. Goettler, Lost Battalion, World War I. Departure orders for France were received on 3 July 1918, the squadron departing from the port of Southampton, arriving in Le Havre, France on 14 July. Entered service with the Air Service (AF) at the Air Service Replacement Concentration Barracks, Street Maxon on 17 July. After receiving additional personnel, supplies and equipment, was moved to the Combat Flying School at the 1st Observation Group School on Amity Aerodrome on 27 July. At Amity, the squadron received American-built de Havilland DH-4 and after training was received on the DH-4s, the squadron was designated as a Corps Observation Squadron and assigned to the I Corps Observation Group. After a short spell at the Bihon Depot, the squadron moved to Bleckley Aerodrome on 8 September for combat duty in the front. The squadron adopted the Dutch Gull insignia, trademark of Old Dutch Cleanser. To the flyers of the 50th Aero Squadron, the Dutch Gull meant one thing: clean up on Germany. The insignia was painted on the aircraft, and squadron members wore matching pins above the right breast pockets on their uniforms. In combat, the mission of the 50th Aero Squadron was general surveillance of the enemy rear areas by means of both visual and photographic reconnaissance. These missions were carried out for the purpose of intelligence gathering and informing 1st Army Headquarters informed of enemy movements and preparations for attacks or retreats of its infantry forces. The 50th identified enemy activity along roads and railroads, ground stations, various storage dumps and airfields, the numbers of fires and activities of enemy aircraft, and the amount of anti-aircraft artillery was also monitored and reported. Due to the nature of the missions and the depths of enemy area which was penetrated, the missions were carried out at high altitudes, usually between 4,500 and 5,500 meters. The 50th first combat mission was flown on 12 September, being assigned for observation duties in support of the 80th and 90th Infantry Divisions as part of the Street Mahil offensive. It flew 2 artillery surveillance flights to help adjust the artillery barrage on enemy forces for the 90th Division and also 6 reconnaissance missions, observing and photographing enemy forces in the rear areas and reporting that information to the 80th Division commander. The weather during the offensive, however, was extremely poor. Fortunately, the enemy air activity was very slight at the beginning of the offensive, but a day or two afterwards there was a marked increase in enemy activity. 1 observer was killed in action, and 1 plane, with its observer and pilot, failed to return during the offensive. After Street Mahil, the squadron moved to the Remicourt aerodrome in preparation for the next American offensive in the Ogham Forest. There it joined the 1st and 12th Aero Squadrons. Movement to Remicourt was delayed until 24 September due to weather. On the 26th, combat operations began supporting the 77th Division. The 50th Aero Squadron flew its first missions of the new Argonne offensive with a complement of 15 pilots, 15 observers, and 16 aircraft. Initially, the aircraft flew observation or drop messages. At the beginning of October, units of the 308th Infantry Regiment were cut off and surrounded by German troops. Able to communicate with division headquarters only by carrier pigeon, a battalion-sized force inadvertently supplied division headquarters with incorrect coordinates of its location. On 2 October, the 50th Aero Squadron searched for signs of the cut-off battalion, and on 5 October the division commander, Major General Robert Alexander, requested that the 50th Aero Squadron locate and resupply the lost battalion by air with ammunition, rations, and medical supplies. On 28 October, the squadron was moved from Remicourt to the new Patwa aerodrome near Clermont-en-Argonne, where it continued combat operations until the 11 November armistice with Germany. Post-World War duty in France. After the end of hostilities, the air service in France was slow to bring their units back to the United States. Transportation was poor, and many had to wait months to board a ship. The 50th was no exception, as it was split into flights and assigned to various locations in France, performing post-war service duties. With the inactivation of the 1st Army Air Service, the 50th Aero Squadron was ordered demobilized. It was ordered to report at the 1st Depot Colombie Les Belles Aerodrome on 1 April 1919 to turn in all of its supplies and equipment, and was relieved from duty with the AEF. The squadron's DH-4 aircraft were delivered to the Air Service Production Centre No. 2 at Romorantin Aerodrome. They practically all of the pilots and observers were detached from the squadron. Personnel at Colombie were subsequently assigned to the Commanding General, Services of Supply, and ordered to report at the staging camp at Clamecy, France on 9 April. There, personnel awaited scheduling to report to one of the base ports in France for transport to the United States. It moved to the port of Marseille, France, 22 April when it boarded the SS Cassada. Upon its arrival in New York, the squadron proceeded to Scott Field, Illinois, arriving on 27 May where its personnel were discharged and returned to civilian life. Combat sectors and campaigns. Streamer sector/campaign dates: North Street Mahil Offensive Campaign 12-16 September 1918, Tal Verdun Sector 17-23 September 1918, Meuse Argonne Offensive Campaign 26 September-11 November 1918. Notable personnel: Lieutenant Owen Russell Bleckley, Medal of Honor KIA Lieutenant Harold Ernest Goettler, Medal of Honor KIA Lieutenant Robert M. Anderson, SSC Lieutenant David Celsus, B. SSC Lieutenant Franklin B. Bellows, DSC KIA Lieutenant Mitchell H. Brown, DSC 1 Aerial Victory Lieutenant William D. Frayne, SSC Lieutenant George R. Phillips, DSC 1 Aerial Victory, DSC Distinguished Service Cross, SSC Silver Star Citation, Kia, killed in action. Interwar era. A small cadre of the squadron remained at Scott Field until August 1919 when it was moved to Langley Field, Virginia. At Langley, it received a Havilland DH-4 and was assigned to the TWAD Observation Wing headquarters. It was assigned to coastal and submarine patrol duties along the Atlantic coast. On 1 October it was attached to the 1st Army Observation Group. It remained active with the TWAD wing and performed demonstrations of effectiveness of aerial bombardment on naval warships, June-September 1921. Reassigned to Mexican border in 1927 as an aerial observation squadron at Brooks Field, San Antonio, Texas before inactivation on 1 August 1927. The designation was then transferred to the office of Chief of the Air Corps OCAC. Organised in December 1927 with organised reserve personnel as a regular Army inactive or REI unit at Dudfield, Texas. Relieved from assignment to OCAC 1 September 1928. Organised reserve officers assigned to the unit participated in summer training at Kelly Field in 1928. Designated mobilization training station was Dudfield, 1927-29. Withdrawn from the 8th Corps area on 27 October 1928 and allotted to the 2nd Corps area. Assigned on 13 February 1929 to the 9th Observation Group. Relieved from assignment to the 9th Observation Group on 8 May 1929 and assigned to the 5th Composite Group. Organised on 27 May 1929 with organised reserve personnel as RAI unit at Mitchell Field, New York. The 50th Observation Squadron was reactivated into active service as an aerial observation and defensive patrol squadron off the coast of Oahu, Hawaii Territory, 1 November 1930, based at Luke Field with ominous 19BS as initial equipment. Remained in Hawaii as part of the Army Hawaiian Department throughout the 1930s as part of the air defenses of the islands. In 1938 it was redesignated as a medium-range reconnaissance squadron, being attached to the 5th Bombardment Group and equipped with B-18 Bowler twin-engine bombers. Was attached to the 11th Bombardment Group in February 1940. Beginning in early 1941, the squadron transitioned into the Boeing B-17D Flying Fortress, having the capability to fly longer reconnaissance missions from Hickam Field. World War II. Following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on 7 December 1941, the 50th was redesignated the 431st Bombardment Squadron. In June 1942, shortly after the Battle of Midway, the 11th Group was authorized as a mobile force by the Army Air Forces in order to respond to a Navy request by Admiral Nimitz for long-range armed search plane support for locating Japanese fleets and with firepower to withstand defending Japanese fighter attacks while tracking the fleet. As a mobile group, the 11th Group received authorization to leave Hickam Field to support Navy operations in the South Pacific Theater during the Guadalcanal and Northern Solomon Islands campaigns. As part of the 11th Bomb Group, the squadron moved to the New Hebrides on 22 July 1942 and temporarily becoming part of 13th Air Force the end of 1942. They bombed airfields, supply dumps, ships, docks, troop positions, and other objectives in the South Pacific from July to November 1942, and received a Distinguished Unit Citation DC for those operations. Continued operations attacking Japanese airfields, installations, and shipping until late March 1943. The squadron returned to Hickam Field on 8 April 1943 and was reassigned to 7th Air Force. Following this, the 11th Bomb Group received the consolidated B-24 Liberator bombers, which it flew until the end of the war. While in Hawaii, the group refitted and trained with the B-24, flying combat training missions against Wake Island and other Central Pacific bases held by the Japanese. It deployed to Ellis Island on 9 November 1943 and resumed combat participating in the Allied offensive through the Gilbert, Marshall, and Marianas Islands, while operating from Funafuti, Tarawa, and Kwajalein. Moved to Guam on 25 October 1944 and attacked shipping and airfields in the Volcano and Bonin Islands. Moved to Okinawa on 2 July 1945 to participate in the final phases of the air offensive against Japan, bombing railways, airfields, and harbor facilities on Kyushu and striking Japanese airfields in eastern China. After the war ceased, the group flew reconnaissance and surveillance missions to China and ferried liberated prisoners of war from Okinawa to Luzon, Philippines. The unit earned the Distinguished Unit Citation and the Presidential Unit Citation for its services in the Pacific. Post-war era. After VJ Day, most squadron members returned to the United States and demobilized. On 29 April 1946, the squadron was redesignated as the 5th Reconnaissance Squadron Very Long Range, Photographic, and assigned to Headquarters, U.S. Army Forces, Pacific at Fort William McKinley, Luzon, Philippines. Transferred to the 313th Bombardment Wing at Clark Field, the 5th was equipped with F-13 Superfortress B-29s, F-7 Liberators B-24J and LS, and a few F-9B Flying Fortresses B-17 FS equipped for long-range photography and mapping which had operated from Australia during the war. The squadron's mission was to perform aerial photography and mapping over the Southwest Pacific, Southeast Asia, Korea, Japan, Philippines, Formosa, and the Pescadores, 1946-1947, some missions being clandestine over northern China, northern Korea and the Soviet Union. The squadron began phasing down for inactivation in 1947, with it being inactivated on 20 October 1947. Modern era. The squadron was reactivated at the United States Air Force Academy on 1 October 1983 and designated the 50th Airmanship Training Squadron. In November 1994, the squadron was redesignated as the 50th Training Squadron. In 1994, the unit earned its 4th Air Force Outstanding Unit Award, 3 of them consecutively in its time at the Academy. The summer of 1997 saw the last flight of the Boeing T-43 for the squadron, with a change in direction for the squadron mission and a loss of funding for the Bleckley ANG base unit which supported T-43 operations. In January 2001, the squadron was redesignated the 50th Education Squadron, reflecting the squadron's change in mission. LINEAGE. Organized as the 50th Aero Squadron on 6 August 1917. Redesignated 50th Aero Squadron Corps Observation on 8 September 1918. Redesignated 50th Aero Squadron on 1 June 1919. Redesignated 50th Squadron Observation on 14 March 1921. Redesignated 50th Observation Squadron on 25 January 1923. Inactivated on 1 August 1927. Organized in the reserve 1 December 1927. Inactivated in the reserve 31 October 1930. Activated on 1 November 1930. Redesignated 50th Reconnaissance Squadron on 25 January 1938. Redesignated 50th Reconnaissance Squadron Medium Range on 6 December 1939. Redesignated 50th Reconnaissance Squadron Heavy on 20 November 1940. Redesignated 431st Bombardment Squadron Heavy on 22 April 1942. Redesignated 431st Bombardment Squadron Heavy C. 3 August 1944. Redesignated 5th Reconnaissance Squadron Very Long Range Photographic on 29 April 1946 and activated on 20 October 1947. Redesignated 50th Airmanship Training Squadron and activated on 1 October 1983. Redesignated 50th Training Squadron on 1 November 1994. Redesignated 50th Education Squadron on 1 January 2001 and activated on 1 August 2005. Redesignated as 50th Attack Squadron on 13 Feb 2018. Activated on 27 Feb 2018. Assignments. Post Headquarters, Kelly Field, 6 August 1917 Aviation Concentration Centre. 3 January 1918 Air Service Headquarters, Eve, British Isles. 24 January 1918 attached to Royal Flying Corps for training until 3 July 1918 Replacement Concentration Centre, Eve. 27 July 1918 Air Corps Observation Group. 8 September 1918 First Air Depot, 1 April 1919 Commanding General, Services of Supply, April-May 1919 Post Headquarters, Mitchell Field, 1 May 1919 Post Headquarters, Scott Field, 27 May 1919 Post Headquarters, Langley Field, 1 August 1919 Taut Wing, September 1919 Attached 1st Army Observation Group after 1 October 1919 1st Army Observation Group, 24 May 1920. Attached to 1st Provisional Air Brigade, 6 May-3 October 19,000, 212th Wing Provisional, 8 August 1922. Attached to Air Service Field Officers, later Air Service Tactical School, Air Corps Tactical School at Corps Training Centre, June-1 August 1927. Regular Army Inactive RAI Reserve. Attached to Office of the Chief of the Air Corps, 1 December 1927. 9th Observation Group, 13 February 1929, 5th Composite Group, 8 May 1929, 5th Composite Group, 1 November 1930, Hawaiian Department, United States Army, 12 October 1938, attached to 5th Bombardment Group, 11th Bombardment Group, 1 February 1940, 11th Bombardment Group, 25 February 1942, U.S. Army Forces, Pacific, 29 April 1946 313th Bombardment Wing, 15 June 1946 5th Reconnaissance Group, 3 February 20 October 1947 34th Education Group, 1 October 1983 1 August 2005 430 12th Operations Group, 27 February 2018 2 October 2018 25th Attack Group, 2 October 2018 Present. Stations: Kelly Field, Texas, 6 August–20 December 1917 Aviation Concentration Center, Garden City, New York, 3 January 1918 Port of Entry, Hoboken, New Jersey. Overseas Transport, RMS Armenia, 9/24 January 1918 Ronnie Rest Camp, Winchester, England, 24 January 1918 RFC Harloxton, Lincolnshire, England, 30 January 1918 Street Makes and Replacement Barracks, France, 17 July 1918 Amonti-Edram, France, 27 July 1918 Behon Air Depot, France, 4 September 1918 Advance Air Depot of Colomiers Depot. Bleckley Aerodrome, France, 8 September 1918 Remicourt Aerodrome, France, 24 September 1918 Patwa Aerodrome, France, 28 October 1918 Longeau Aerodrome, near Langres, France, 6 December 1918. The flight stayed in Patwa Aerodrome until 18 December 1918 and moved to Clameseat before sailing back to United States. Celsius flight operated from Patwa Aerodrome till 12 December 1918. Then moved to the Camp de la Valbonne Department, a military training grounds near Lyons. Colomiers Belzedrum, France, 1 April 1919 Clameseat, France, 9 April 1919 Marseilles, France, 22 April 1919 Mitchell Field, New York, 1 May 1919 Scott Field, Illinois, 27 May 1919 Langley Field, Virginia, August 1919 Brooks Field, Texas, 25 June–1 August 1927 Dodd Field, Texas, 1 December 1927 Mitchell Field, New York, 27 May 1929 Luke Field, Hawaii, 1 November 1930 Hickam Field, Hawaii, 9 October 1939 Nadi Airfield, Viti Levu, Fiji, 24 July 1942. Echelon operated from Luganville Airfield, Espiritu Santo, New Hebrides, August 1942 Luganville Airfield, Espiritu Santo, New Hebrides, 1 November 1940 to 28 March 1943. Forward Echelon operated from Henderson Field, Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands, December 1942 Hicken Field, Hawaii Territory, 8 April 1943 Funafiti Airfield, Nanumea, Gilbert Islands, 11 November 1943 Hawkins Field, Tarawa, Gilbert Islands, 16 January 1944 Catalina Airfield, Marshall Islands, 31 March 1944 Gunner Airfield, Guam, Marianas Islands, 21 October 1944 Kadena Airfield, Okinawa, 2 July 1945 Fort William McKinley, Luzon, Philippines, December 1945 Clark Field, Luzon, Philippines, 15 June 1946 20 October 1947 United States Air Force Academy, Colorado, 1 October 1983 1 August 2005 Shaw AFB, South Carolina, 27 Feb 2018 Present. Aircraft: the Havilland DH-4, 1918–1919, 1990–1000, 927 Royal Aircraft Factory SM-5, 1919–1000, 927 Thomas Morse -19, 1930–1936 Martin B-12, 1936–1000, 938 Curtis A-3 Falcon, 1936–1000, 938 Boeing P-12, 1936–1000, 938 B-18 Bolo, 1938–1941 B-17D Flying Fortress, 1941–1943 B-24 J Liberator, 1943–1945 F-13 Super Fortress, 1946–1947 F-7 Liberator, 1946–1947 F-9B Flying Fortress, 19,000. 476 20 October 1947 T-43 Bobcat, 1983–1000, 997 MQ-9 Repo, 2018 Present.